Yeah, well, while folks are trickling in, just an unofficial survey, or official survey, I guess, very official. I'd like to know the general size of the organizations that you represent. First question. So if you're five-person shop or smaller, raise your hand so we get a sense. Okay.
Who's an independent contractor?
Oh, yeah, independent contractors. All right, a handful. 5 to, let's say, 15. Okay. 15 to 25. 25 to 100. All right. 100 plus.
How big do you want to fuck me?
Yeah.
How many people
100 plus. Okay.
How many people are trying to start their own company that haven't yet?
Wait, he's 100 plus and he's trying to start his own company.
You don't want to start a company. If you're like this, don't do it.
And what about years in business? Like 1 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 plus. Okay, that's cool. You guys got the visual matrix? 6 plus, 100 plus. Okay, all right. Useful.
How many of them are founders versus employees?
And founders. Okay, great. And I'm assuming the rest are employees, right? Who doesn't want to raise their hand? All right, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Kurt Velker. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Forum 1 Communications. Oh, sorry, we're now Forum 1, not Forum 1 Communications. And I am Chris Woles today. Chris is my direct boss. He organized this panel and then promptly delegated it to me, which is what you do when you're leading your own Drupal business, I think. We're going to talk today in a really informal way about the challenges, the successes, the failures, the trials that we've had running businesses in the Drupal space for the last several years. And we really want to have as much input from you all as we can, be as open and transparent as we can about how we've addressed things and where we succeeded and where we failed. There's a lot of important and challenging topics that face the owners and runners of businesses, and there's an adage in business that what got you here won't get you there. And so no matter how successful you are as a developer, or how successful you are as a creative or as a salesperson, the things that you have to get better at as you grow your business are always new and different for you. So that's kind of the focus that we want to have here in the conversation. What are the things that we're trying to learn and get better at, and what have we tried? And hopefully answer some of your questions and learn from you guys. So on the stage with us, we've got a lot of experience and expertise. I'll let them introduce themselves, and if you could just kind of tell us about your firms. So for those of you who don't, for the folks that don't know you guys, fun fact about them, kind of differentiators, and what's keeping you up at night as the founder of your organization. So Sean, we can start with you.
Cool. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Sweet. Mics. All right. My name is Sean Larkin. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of ThinkShout. We're a Portland-based development firm. We focus on user experience and digital experience management for nonprofits. We're a team of 20 now. We are 4.5 years old. At year 3, we were ranked the ninth fastest growing private company in Portland, which surprised the heck out of us, but was cool. What keeps me up at night? I think, to be totally transparent, and I think one quick thing I think that we talked about in this, like, we want to be really candid with you guys and transparent and create a safe space for people to talk about stuff. So I'll just get started. I think the thing that keeps me up the most at night is my own limitations as a manager. I think the things that help me be really effective in founding a company and convincing the first couple people to, base their mortgages and their children's education on me as an employer, and got clients to say yes to working with us, like that kind of, those initial skills sometimes are the opposite of the skills needed to actually manage a bigger company and a bigger team in terms of just that energy and stuff like that. So for me, it's like, how do I develop on a personal level quickly enough to keep up with the needs of the company that I really care about and the team that I really care about. And so the way that I address that is we've made a very strong investment in business coaching. and establishing what we call our small council, so a leadership team and an advisory team, and then really making sure that we have the resources to check in as owners and founders to make sure that we're not making stupid decisions as two dudes who grew up in the Midwest with college educations, you know.
What's a fun fact?
Yeah, fun fact.
Oh, fun fact. What is a fun? Marcy, what's a fun fact about Think Shop? We have more English majors than anything else on staff.
That's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Tracy.
Hi. My name is Tracy Betts. I own Balance Interactive. We're a full-service digital agency located right outside of Washington, D.C. Our clients consist mostly of trade associations and professional societies. So, you know, you've got a lot of content and you're scared to death as far as what you're going to do with it. That's generally our sweet spot. I think at year 15, I could have been nominated for the slowest growing company in Washington, D.C. I took a very purposeful approach to growing my business for a variety of reasons, which I'm happy to share with you. And just in the last year have I started hunkering down and really putting some growth goals behind the business. So the thing that keeps me up at night is how do I hire properly and how do I grow leadership to help me get the company where I need it to be in the next 5 years. That's the thing that I think about most these days. Fun fact about Balance, where this is an easy one. I really like men, I promise you, but our company is composed about 98% women.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we have a full women tech team, which I'm very, very proud of.
Very cool. Alex.
Sorry. My name is Alex Yervik-Acklesberg. I am co-founder and CEO of ZipTech. We are a 7-year-old, about 26 people, mostly Drupal firm based in Philadelphia. We work across a lot of verticals for Fortune 50 companies to startups that we help build their technology stack for. Focus a lot on the infrastructure of organizations and build a lot of internal tools like ERP systems. The things that keep me up at night are somewhat related to the things that make us successful when we are, which are the relationships. And I think relationships, whether it's with your partner, which is I have one co-founder, Jody Hamilton, who's our CTO. So whether it's with your co-founder or your spouse because of things going on at work, or with employees, or with your clients, those relationships can be the most rewarding things, but at times they can be really the most difficult things. And but like any good relationship, if you work on it, they can, and that's something that I've definitely learned a lot to do a lot better over the years, is to really focus on those relationships. And as a result, now most of my sleepless nights come from my children and not from my business, which is a nice change. If you're staying up at night, at least you're thinking about you want to kill somebody that you love too much to actually kill, then somebody not really. So I'm going to give 2 fun facts about ZipTech. Number one is I can't say that we're the best Drupal firm because we have so many great co-operators. I don't know the word. Co-operators.
Friendly competitors.
But I can say that we have the most number of life forms in our office. I can say pretty convincingly, because we have hamsters, dogs, plants, neomatides, which are things we have to buy to keep flies away from our gardens. I breed corals in my office, and on and on. And then, I'll leave it at one fun fact.
I just want to add, because we would all be lying if we didn't add this. I am sure we've all stayed up some nights worrying about payroll.
Right.
Okay?
And cash.
So let's just be really honest. Let's get that cash.
Well, that's, I think that's the source of the problem with most of those relationships. If you really come down to it, it's cash.
That's great. So leadership, growing your leadership, growing as a manager, working on the relationships. For me at Forum One, and I'm not a founder. I have been at Forum One for 15 years. I have some equity. I'm not a founder. what keeps me up at night is reputation. As we've grown and as you manage more people, the thing that is hardest for you to directly control is your reputation, and it's really the most important, we think, as a business, especially as a professional services firm. So we work pretty deliberately on the tone that we take with every engagement, and on trying to grow as people and be great trusted advisors to our customers is what we try to do. But that's what kind of keeps me up at night at Forum 1. And a little bit about Forum 1, we're about 90 folks now. We're headquartered in Alexandria, Virginia. We have an office in Seattle and a small office in DC as well. We're a full-service digital agency, all open source, mostly Drupal. And we work with large NGOs to help them extend their influence with online digital communications. So we had teed up several different topics that we think are going to be of interest and that are related to the themes that we just brought up. And we wanted very much to kind of get a sense from you all. These are, I don't know how many people are at the Business Summit on Monday. A lot of you. So this is almost like a redo in some ways of the Business Summit conversations that were had. So I know that some of you guys had some great input there. So growth, capacity, and scaling is a constant challenge for organizations of any size, right? Assuming that growth is a goal that you have. Organizational development is really kind of at the heart of what two of these guys mentioned: leadership, growth as a manager. How do you really build the skills of your team that go beyond what you have as a founder? Managing risk and knowing when to make the right decisions and how to balance hard decision making. Talent retention and hiring, lead generation and business development. Whether and how to partner and when. And then the challenges of kind of looking ahead. How do you identify the course that you're going to take as an organization and a business that differentiates you but takes advantages of the opportunities that the market presents? So in a nutshell, those are the things that we're prepared to talk about. And what we wanted to do was ask you all which of these are most top of mind and seem most salient to you today. So we had some fancy polling tool ready to go, but we're not going to do it. We're just going to use our hands to vote. Of these, let's actually do this by having you shout out which one of these you would like for us to tackle first. And the most cash. Making payroll in cash. Lead generation. Growth, lead generation. All right, lead generation was an early enthusiastic one, and we'll try to hit on all of these too. We want this to be informal. So, who's opened up with lead generation? Who was it that said it first? A bunch of people here. So, lead generation can mean just straight up marketing, right? But go ahead and speak up and tell me what's the thing that keeps you up at night about lead generation.
Okay.
All right.
Workflow, and you also have to have a good cash flow. So bringing in people who will be willing to quote unquote take a chance on you and your work. If you don't get those people into the door and get them as clients, then you're sort of stuck.
Right.
So that's for me personally, that's always been the thing. How are we going to get people to know we exist? One. How are we going to get people to trust that we can do what they want us to do?
Okay. All right. So lead generation, and lead generation is a little different than marketing. So Sean, Tracy, Alex, when it comes to how you're thinking about building the pipeline for the business, what are some of the things that you've maybe tried concretely in the last year, say, to purposefully build some aspect of your business that either bombed and you learned from, or you felt like was pretty successful? Anyone have one for us?
Oh yeah, put me on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think for us, I'm hesitant because, to be totally honest, and lead generation hasn't necessarily been a huge concern for us, and I think we've been really fortunate in that. And the reason is because I think we've just kind of decided that if we focus on trying to make sure that we're adding value every time that we open our mouths, I can't say that I do that, but our staff does that. When we're talking to potential customers and helping them solve problems, regardless of whether or not we're under contract, that kind of actually turns into lead generation for us. So that's been kind of our model. We do a lot of like everyone here, we do a lot of open source contributions. At this point, there are about 50,000 Drupal websites running on about 25 contributed modules that we maintain actively. So that has really kind of been lead generation for us, is just really making sure that we're giving back. We don't really do paid advertising. We look for speaking engagements. We look for opportunities to write for other publications. And so that approach is really just kind of, we've just kind of trusted that the leads will come if we're putting good stuff out into the world. And that might sound cheesy, but that's been more of our focus. And what makes me feel twitchy isn't whether or not I've been getting our name out there as much as, like, am I actually adding value? Like, are there, if we have a quarter where we don't see an uptick in adoption of our open source modules, our Drupal contributions, or where we haven't, like, contributed meaningfully to other blogs, not just our own, then I get twitchy feeling like we're not doing enough. We're not putting enough good stuff out there to expect that anybody's going to work with us.
So you mentioned the open source contribution, which is one of the, like, pushing on that a little bit. It's something I admire a lot about what you guys have done, and whether it was intentional or not, maybe you can talk about the way you've been able to connect the types of open source stuff that you have come to be known for supporting, Salesforce Suite and MailChimp. It's kind of a collection of tools that aren't just contributions kind of for contribution's sake, but they're very connected to the types of sites and experiences that you want to create for your customers. So how did you guys arrive at that? And you guys have made big investments there, so it's not a small investment to get that open source contribution as lead generation. How did you guys kind of come to that as a key driver?
Yeah, so we're at this point, like, our reputation is largely built on the suite of modules we've developed for digital experience management. So CRM integration, paid event registration, strong email integration with MailChimp, stuff like that. I think the key is that even if we're not getting paid for every minute that we're putting into an open source project, really having the requirements being grounded in client requirements has been really critical for us. So, like, and that has allowed us to kind of build tools that actually fit together. So the first thing we did was we launched the entity registration module for Drupal 7. We started and kind of developed some expertise there. We got a lot of engagements to do that kind of work. Then we developed Red Hen CRM to really help out with association management needs and things like that. And then, and so we just kind of started building around that. So really kind of building open source abstraction into our client engagements has been really helpful. But I think that both of these guys, you guys have
taken the exact opposite approach. We've never called ourselves a Drupal shop. The majority, right, you're only as good as your last project, right? So that's important because your reputation is everything, as you said. I believe we do a lot of marketing. We do a lot of webinars. We do a lot of content marketing. I think the thing that for us brings in the most leads is our partner relationships. So we make sure that we do a lot of integration with back-end systems that are specific to the association industry. And we have very good partnerships with a lot of them. So when they, as soon as they sniff out that there's a Drupal implementation, we're the first people that they call. And I think partnerships continue to be the fastest and the easiest way for us to generate more leads.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a little bit to that, I tend to think that the leads that you get are really based upon, like, the successes that you've had and your ability to talk about them, and in really strange ways. Like, if you have success with a hospital, and you talk about it, other hospitals might see it and say, oh, well, you know Drupal and hospitals, even though technically it really doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing different about a hospital website than anybody else's website, other than they make you sign a business associate agreement together. But I think the partner thing is really important, and so in our organization, we've shifted from even thinking about it in a lead perspective to really thinking about it from a partner perspective and trying to find organizations that are looking for long-term partners, possibly in multiple projects, and then really focusing on, delivering happiness to those accounts. And there's no shortcut there. You have to develop those relationships over a good amount of time. Some of the partnerships that we're sort of now reaping benefits from, we've had, somewhat rocky relationships for years before that, but you keep at it and you keep trying to do stuff together, and eventually you can be successful like that. And then if you can develop partners that have bigger networks, that have more work that's outside of just whether it's like other parts of their organization or they serve other companies, so that's a big growth area for us, and I think I'd recommend that to anybody here. Find those companies that are doing strategy, that are doing design, that are doing but are using some other technologies now, and I guarantee you they're coming up against requirements that require Drupal. And so you can become their Drupal experts, and then that can get you into many more doors than you'd be able to get in on your own because they've already been at it for years. So leverage other people's partnerships, other people's relationships as much as you can. But really, if you focus on getting those one lead can lead to your company to grow by multiple times. If it's a partnership where they have more opportunity behind that lead. So really, it's not all leads are created equal, and I think just something that you have to figure out is how to filter it down, how to boil that down, distill it to the real ones that are going to.
So going from the lead generation to business development, kind of closing and winning the business out of those leads. What do you guys have if you were to be able to go back, let's say 4 years, the advice that you would give to yourself about what's the most effective thing that you've learned on how to win the project, to close the deal? Was there anything that you would tell your former self that you've grown as a manager, Sean?
I've been talking a lot. I'd love to hear from.
I was just going to say, I think that I spent a lot of years assuming it's a crowded marketplace, and again, we don't position ourselves as a Drupal shop, so a lot of times I found myself in pitches where the person that came before me to pitch was Edelman, which is a large PR agency, and then we would be the second to pitch, and then the third would be some guy, just some freelancer, and I think I didn't take the time to educate the customer and help them understand how to compare apples to apples, right? And I made that mistake a few times, more than I care to admit.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's good.
I would say that the number one thing that I would have told myself early on is to really focus on getting things started no matter what. And so really trying to get them to commit to the littlest thing, like 1 day of work, 2 days of work. Almost always, if we can convince them to do that, the projects will go on. But if we have to compete before we know really what we're getting into, a lot of times we'll be very cautious with how much we tell the client it's going to cost, and we'll get underbid a lot, I feel like. But yeah, really focusing on, like, can I get them to just buy like something really, really tiny where I can just start to show them how quickly and how much we can deliver for, I think when it comes to educating clients, helping them to understand what value is instead of cost. It's not all cost. It's sometimes you're comparing, like Jody, my partner, likes to say, it's not comparing apples to oranges. It's comparing apples to a supermarket. And so I think, and that's a conceited way, but you have to be somewhat conceited to succeed, I think. So I think focusing on just getting in the door and then delivering really fast successes to the client is going to lead you to get that bigger chunk of work.
So we can move on to the next. Yeah, there's a question. Yeah, so let me think quickly. What I would tell myself. I think preparation is one of the things that I've learned. Anytime you get one shot to give that presentation, to impress, to understand, I would say preparation really matters. So making sure that the team and empowering the team that you're going to deliver with, particularly, once you're at that 20-person size, 25-person size, it's not likely that you're going to go win the business by yourself. It's the team that you're bringing that they're going to be buying. So making sure they're prepared, that you've listened. And maybe that's another thing I would say is that the consultancy saying, try to avoid showing up and throwing up. Like it's really easy for us as I'm the technology guy in our company, or one of many. And it's really easy to show up there and think that you have the answers instead of answering their question with a question that really lets you understand what they're after. Because I think sometimes less is more. So maybe that's something I think I've learned. Yeah, Carson.
So at what point in your growth did you guys maybe have to add dedicated marketing, dedicated salespeople, or is that your role as the owner?
Can I
It's a
take
great
that
question.
first?
Yeah,
Because I've done this wrong.
Yeah, so the question for the video is, have you, and when did you, if you have, make that decision to kind of add a dedicated sales person or leader on your team?
So I want to answer this first because I've done it wrong, and I'll tell you what not to do. First of all, if you're looking to hire a salesperson, don't hire them from your local Buddhist temple because they're going to be a little bit too casual about it. This is the first thing not to do. When I hired my first salesperson, I didn't have the proper funnel established. So I didn't have the proper marketing funnel that was bringing in what he needed to do. Now, right, like I said, he came from a Buddhist temple. He wasn't going to go out there and grab that stuff himself. So that was a mistake that I made. So I backed off from that approach. I hired a full-time marketing director, which was an amazing thing. She's sitting right there. She's amazing. The second thing is I rather than hiring that next salesperson, I instead focused on the other parts of the process. So who's writing the proposals? And this is the other mistake I made. I used to have a woman who would just make phone calls to get our foot in the door, and she was amazing. And for whatever reason, we quit using her. And this morning I was reminded how effective that was. So it's, I've kind of gone back and forth, and that's how we've handled it.
Let's go move on to another topic. So cash flow came up. That's kind of a small sliver of maybe the growth capacity scaling area. Everyone okay with that? Cash flow, growth, scaling. So thinking about growing your organizations, as you guys are all trying to do. So first question is, you guys want to grow, right? Why do you guys want to grow? Alex, I know you've got a great answer for this.
Yeah, you got a good one.
Yeah, I just think it's a function. It's just a basic business function that's sort of very hard to resist, that you must grow or you're moving backwards. And that's mainly due to the fact that your costs rise faster than your prices do. And I think if you're not going to try to grow your team to have more people contributing to the top line as well as taking more from the bottom line, but the main thing is contributing more, then you really have to have a really good plan on how you're going to deal with keeping your prices and the salaries and other costs associated with the business aligned. Because I don't think that I'm always really fascinated by companies that say they're not going to grow, because to me it's harder than growing. Even though growing is a lot more stressful, a lot more risky, ultimately, in some sense, I think in a medium term, it can be really risky. I think the other issue is if you don't grow, you don't provide opportunities for your staff to grow up, because there's no management to become, because so they're going to be looking somewhere else for a job. So you have to grow because you're individually growing as members of the team and need bigger challenges, more responsibilities, and those sorts of things.
Gotcha. And so on the cash flow question, the really specific one, what have you guys done and learned from handling cash flow gaps when they occurred? I'm assuming at some point they happened. What do you guys? What's your strategy?
I think it's finding that consistency, and we I know at one time we would get a big project, and then we'd have a lull, and then we'd get a big project and we'd have a lull. And I think the key there was making sure that we were having a breadth of services, ongoing services and retainers with existing clients. And we make sure that a certain percentage of our revenue is coming from those existing clients every year, because that's what evens everything out.
Right. Anything to add?
And a line of credit is pretty good.
Other specific cash flow questions, or growth and organizational growth. That's a great question. So the question is percentage of revenue that comes from kind of maintenance, support, and how much comes from like build projects.
We shoot for 30%. Right now we're at about 25. I don't like that.
Sorry, we're under 10.
Yeah, we decided that we needed to kind of grow that practice area, and so we're about 20. I will say to be totally honest, it's the least profitable section of our business, but one of the most crucial sections of our business in terms of reputation management. So we kind of do it, but it's because it's the right thing to do to make sure we maintain good relationships.
Mm. Yeah, there was.
What strategies the panelists have used or metrics to kind of increase transparency around the finances of their firms and kind of get their employees to sort of buy into like what they do, kind of like what drops to the bottom line?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, what are the things that we've done in order to increase transparency, or how transparent are we being to focus staff on these important metrics?
I feel like this is just reminding me of all the things I've done wrong, actually.
Well, share. Come on, that's what we're here for.
So I happen to be just an open and transparent kind of person, and I early on opened the books up to the company. There's this open book philosophy, and I took that to heart, and I didn't take into consideration that I really needed to present that in a different way to my employees, and it freaked them out a little bit, or they didn't understand it, right? So now we approach it a little bit differently. We talk about, some key indicators, revenue, bill, how important is billability to a project, and what that means to you specifically in your job. So it's complicated.
Yeah. We've had the exact same experience because I think all of our shops here kind of are progressive shops, but if you share the wrong data the wrong way, it creates a lot of fear and uncertainty.
Are you guys sharing your revenue targets and those goals and progress against those on a regular basis to your teams?
With our management
with
team?
The management teams.
Our management team are very transparent. We rolled out a management level, kind of a director level about 7 or 8 months ago. And we provided top line, bottom line numbers to them. We're starting to roll out actual salary information to that management level. Because even that, one of the things that's hard for folks to understand sometimes is that there's supply and demand on the hiring side, and that sometimes a more junior person gets hired at a higher rate than somebody else got hired 2 years ago. And so really wanting to make sure that we can talk very clearly around that stuff before sharing, just to make sure that feelings don't get hurt and so forth.
Yeah, we try to be very open with them, again, with the management team. I think at some level, not everything has to be discussed by everybody, and I think the problem that you run into if you open too much to everybody is, well, A, not everybody cares, but B, it just opens it up to like micromanagement-esque sort of like suggestion. Why don't we do this different? Why don't we do this different? And it just can open up like a flood of, information where before you just can make a decision like yes, no, yes, no. Yeah. So I think there's something there. But we opened up more to our managers because we want them to become more responsible for the budgeting in the company and to help us make decisions about sort of where we're going and and also as a sanity check on ourselves to make sure that we're not kind of going off the deep end with how we're thinking about things. But I think on the salary side, I think it really, you have to understand that as an owner, people talk in a business. They're all going to talk to each other anyway. So you might as well keep it. I would try to come up with rules for how parameters around how you're hiring at different levels. And then if you do hire someone, the way that we deal with that's at a higher level for the same position, we push the whole thing up and it raises everyone in that position's rate. And I think, so it can be expensive to do that, but ultimately, I think it's really important to be transparent on the pay side, just if you want to keep employees long term. Yeah. And you want them to come to you when someone offers them more money and be able to have that conversation. If they don't think you're being open and honest with them, they're not going to come to you, and you'll lose lose your best people at times. So I think there's certain things, I don't think everyone has to know how much we spend on beer. We spend a lot. So just leave it at that. And
Fair enough.
Listen, this is privileged company information, like I said.
Right.
We're not getting all transparent on every event.
That's right.
But on certain things that are probably the most important to the employees, we do give that transparency, and then we give more to the next level up, and then ultimately they can. We're not going to monitor their email that they're not sending off that information.
We've been really structured in how we've tried to be transparent, and it's kind of fun. We have an all hands meeting once a month, and then a quarterly wrap up session every quarter, and we've been doing them since we were probably 25 folks. And so you can even look back at all the PowerPoint decks. It's been kind of fun. But we track and are really transparent about revenue goals and where we are, our 30, 60, 90, and 12-month revenue pipelines and where we are against those. We kind of know how much, and this kind of gets to the cash flow thing, we kind of have ideas of how much of our 30, 60, 90, and 12-month pipeline we need to have filled at certain times in order to stay cash flow positive. So we're really transparent with those, and utilization for us is really important because we build time and materials. So those three we're really and customer satisfaction. We do customer satisfaction calls. So those month after month are kind of reiterated, and that's what we choose to share, but no salary information. But I think everybody knows. Yeah.
I think the point that Tracy made about employees want to feel safe, and so if in terms of all the decisions you're making around how you manage and how transparent you are, and your policies and all of that, people just want to be safe. We kind of thought, again, two founders who are very similar from the Midwest, same values and similar values and so forth. We just assumed that everybody had the same values as us. We're owners. We really like to have every little piece of data in front of us. We like to make very independent decisions. And that serves some people on our staff, but other people just want to know what the policy is. So we were just talking about the open vacation policy where you can take as much vacation as you want. For some people, that's awesome. For other employees, that creates so much anxiety every time they want to take a day off or get their teeth fixed, because they don't know what's right culturally. So I think that's really, balancing that. You don't want to have an iron fist, but recognizing that some people just want a really clear roadmap.
So let's go to another one of these topics here. Anyone shout out what we should do next? What's the next? Hiring and talent.
We'll hire anyone in this room.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Next topic. So insights on hiring and talent. You guys all know that it's a really competitive marketplace for hiring, particularly in the Drupal space. What are some of the things that have worked well? I'll put you on the spot, Alex. For you guys have a really engineering focused team. I know. What are some of the things that you've done that have been successful to find and then retain the folks that you've got?
So we try to bet early. So we've trained a very high percentage of our staff, brought them in without any Drupal expertise, and to some degree we do a lot of Drupal training and we do a lot of mentoring outside of that. So we already have the capacity internally to do that. But I think really Drupal is something you have to get experience for, and you have to learn as a specific language, but ultimately the thing that's going to make you successful or not is not Drupal knowledge in particular. We can fill your head with knowledge, but if you're not going to push yourself forward and really challenge yourself and take responsibility and all these sort of other traits that we want, then it doesn't matter whether you know Drupal or not. So I think one of the things that we've done is moved away from just Drupal, making sure the Drupal thing is checked and really try to just get at who is this person and what other experiences do they have that can maybe inform and broaden our perspective on how we're doing things. So, I think focusing on, the other part of that is that it makes people much more loyal, because if you take a chance on them and you invest a lot in them, most people, it's not always the case, but a very large percentage of the people that we've trained are still with us. So, it's maybe 20, 30% of them will lose after a year or so, but for those that stay, we would never be able to hire them on the regular market. So I think betting on people when they're not clearly the winner but you think that they could become it with a little help is to me the biggest thing.
That's cool.
And we made that mistake, and it really hurt us really badly. For a while, we tried to just hire people that already knew Drupal, who we could bill day one out of the gate, and there's some of our worst hires. Now, with that said, we are, if any of you are senior developers and want a job, come see me, or even not senior developers. But I think we all gave that pitch. I think at the end of the day, it really hurt us when we made that our main focus and didn't focus on building our bench.
Yeah. Anything else from you guys on hiring or finding? I think that's half the challenge, right?
Retaining. Yeah, I think into the retention question thought is I didn't early enough on. I did not hire toward our company culture, and that is so important. You can imagine with this many women in my company how different that culture is, right? So making sure that this is someone who is going to be a really good cultural fit is important, and there's a few ways we do that. We we have them in the office. We pay them to come into the office for a day. Let's date each other a little bit, figure out if this is going to work. That's been effective. The other thing is back to partnerships. Because we have close partnerships with a lot of different organizations, and because this community is so amazing, I know that when I'm looking for someone, sometimes I'll call a kind of competitor, or I'll call somebody who I know has a Drupal team, and I'll say, I'm hiring for. I had lunch with a guy last week, right? And he said, I'm trying to hire a really good project manager. And I said, well, I've got some resumes of people that didn't fit with my organization, but that may be great for you. Let me send those to you. Or I had an employee who I gave this big speech one day about growth, and you're either going to row the boat or you're going to get off the ship kind of thing. And if you don't want to be here, I'll help you find a job. And he came into my office and said, I don't want to work that hard. Will you help me find a job? So I called a competitor, and I said, hey, I got a great themer. He doesn't want to work very hard.
Yeah.
But, you want him, and got him a job. So those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think a couple of quick tactical things, too. And I've learned a lot about this. I think New Relic is, and there's some guys here, maybe talk to them. I think their engineering hiring practices are really phenomenal. Alex Croman is their vice president of engineering. He kind of ran Open Sourcery back in the day, and I used to work with him there. I think a couple things there. They have a very tight process, and from the time that they interview someone, first interview to hire, and this is, they're a big team, but it's 48 hours, and that includes flying them out for an on-site. And the rationale there is that if they find somebody who is serious, they take those people's time very seriously. And so, when they offer a job, they have a very high closing rate in terms of who actually signs, because folks know that they've been respected. I think the worst thing is to drag out an interview process or to start the recruiting process when you're still on the fence as to whether or not you're going to hire or have the capacity to hire, because it just wastes people's time. And if you live in a small community, a small town, folks learn that, and you develop a reputation for not respecting people's time, or the opposite. And so people want to feel respected in that hiring process.
On the retention front, I know that we love for our retention to be 100%, just like everyone here. I think we're probably about 90-ish%, so you know that there's always going to be some turnover. One of the things that we do really deliberately, and it's a small thing, but it's the exit process. We try to be really making sure that we're understanding the reasons, exit interviews, and making sure that we're kind of creating alumni as much as we are kind of losing an employee. It sounds really cheesy, but we've had 2 hires in the past 4 years that have like revolving doors. So they left for great professional development reasons, and they've come back, and now our director over West Coast was one of our UX leaders in 2004-ish or so, and then he came back in 2008, and now he leads after going to Nokia and some other places to lead our West Coast. So that's one thing that we've done. I don't know if that's really retention. It's kind of like rebounding, but that's been helpful for us as we think about it.
The alumni thing is pretty important for us as well, and I think you want to end things with your employees, whether you let go of them or they decide to leave you. You want to leave it in a place where they still enjoyed it. It still seems like a positive experience. And yeah, ultimately we have lots of, we definitely have former employees who end up referring us people, or like, you know, someone says, oh, I was talking to so-and-so at a convention and they were talking about working for you. It sounds great. And we've hired a couple people that way, and I think that's been really important. So, but I would say another thing is if one of the tactic, just a small tactic that we use, is if you decide how much you're going to give people in raises per year, break it up into thirds and try to give it more often. Because that is like a little reminder. Oh, hey, I'm going someplace, and so if somebody comes with a lot more money, I mean, they can look at it and they can be like, okay, well, if I, you know, what's the distance between here and there that I would have to cover? That's assuming I get no promotions, because that would maybe push me up anymore. So I think that keeps people from straying, you know, their eyes from straying too far.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so now let's ask the hard questions now. Okay, go ahead.
So as a developer, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the development side of hiring, but it's the other side of the business that I feel like a lot of people don't know what I know about. I'm wondering, how do you identify the non-developer roles that will have like the biggest impact on the business?
That's a great question. What's the biggest impact addition that you guys have made to your team? Is that a fair way to? So I'll restate the question. Was just for the recording, which was, as a developer, you've got that nailed. What are the main things that could help you grow the team? What are the things that you need to add that are most critical to helping you grow? Is that fair? So for you guys, what would have been kind of some critical points where you added a capacity or skill that you needed that kind of helped in a more than just incremental way? Anything? Or that you tried and didn't work and you learned from?
I think operations was a big one that we sort of ignored, and project account management was another one that we sort of ignored, being very developer focused. Operations meaning like making sure, you know, that people are billing, that people are utilizing their time effectively, that they're not going way over budget, and same with project and account management, making sure that we're communicating effectively with the clients and listening to them a lot. And so yeah, operations is huge. So your books, your pay, all those, you know, those little sorts of details can really mess you up.
Is your question about how to hire non-developers or who to hire?
Who?
Identifying like what role would be most beneficial to my business. I can only realistically say hire one person this quarter. Like what role would have the biggest impact?
And you raised your hand early, and you're in the what size are you guys now?
We've got like about 5 full-time staff.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about 5 full-time staff, and I'm thinking, you know, for me, my project managers are solid, but at 5, I really needed a project manager who also could play an account manager role. You know, someone who could really dig into a client, understand them at a more strategic level, explore other offerings that we might have had. To me, that would be the best hire to make right now. And if you have project managers, then it would be an account manager type.
We did a lot of, and continue to do a lot of modeling on this. So I did a session yesterday, the slides are online, about spreadsheets and how to manage performance metrics for your business. So for us, it was really making sure that we had strong forecasts for what the costs were going to be and what the revenue could be with different hiring scenarios. So hiring someone who'd be a part-time, you know, QA person and also manage events, or that's not a position we hired for, but like stuff like that to see how the configurations would affect cash flow. Because the worst thing for us were those moments where we had anxiety about not knowing the impact of adding unbillable staff in different roles on the bottom line. You know, so like it's really scary if and we've all been there, like if you don't know how much you're going to make until the day that you do billing at the end of the month, like that's terrifying. And it creates anxiety that leads to bad conversations potentially with your team. You know, like you're stressed out because you're like, shoot, now we have all this overhead, and these guys aren't billing, and we need an extra half an hour a month of billable out of each staff person, and you end up saying silly things, because you're just stressed. So being able to be predictive and then say, you know what, we're bringing on an unbillable person, and that's going to let us scale, and we're okay with the fact that the next quarter our profit margin is going to drop to 14% or 12%, or whatever it might be for your organization. So it just really grounds that conversation.
Yeah. I had one thought on that one also, which I agree with all these things. The other thing is that knowing that you don't know what you need to know, kind of thing. The best hire could very well be to find to find out what you need to go learn, embrace it yourself, and find another you. You could be able to. The development skills may be the ones that you need to be able to kind of replicate more easily than turning yourself into, like Sean's investing in the coaching and the kind of leadership development of yourself too. So those are other options.
And one quick thing, I'm sorry. Yeah. So going back to that question of growth and scaling and the hiring choices, I think that one of the big things that people forget to do is think about what your exit is from day one. We're professional services companies for the most part. Really, there aren't big sales. Like every once in a while, but like your exit probably looks different. Selling to employees, creating an ESOP, different things like that. But understanding that and that having that kind of really affect the choice to grow, how you hire, just to know like what does it mean for you to be sustainable or feel like this thing that you spend 5 years, 15 years, 20 years on is going to end up being what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, over here.
What's your primary success criteria? So after a year, you've hired and you've retained. So this person's really working out. How do you know that? What's the criteria that tells you this was a good, strong hire?
So the question is, what's the main criteria for making sure you know that this is a really strong addition to your team?
How does someone know they're succeeding?
How do you set someone up to know that they're succeeding?
So I sit down at the beginning of the year with everybody individually, and we set goals together. So as a team, we understand we have 2 major goals for the year, right? And everybody knows that they fit somewhere into those. And then I sit down and we talk about this is how you specifically can make a dent in those. So I get a little bit granular on that, and maybe that's micromanagery of me. I don't know. A lot of times too, you get surprises. We have people that come in and they're just so engaged and so excited about the work that they're doing in their craft that you just know. So that's part of it. I don't think there's one metric though that I could use.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys.
I think it's really depends on who you're talking about. I think with developers and designers, assuming your sales are okay, I think it's pretty clearly delivering stuff. Whether if that's to your organization or to your clients, I think that's pretty easy to measure. And most of us are time and materials, so you're usually measuring those for billing purposes anyway. I think the harder measurements are on the business side, and I really just think it just depends on what is it that you're trying to do. I mean, like, it's easy. I think there's abstract goals that are, you could, like, no angry calls this month, no X amount of having to discount stuff, or, whatever metrics you are, that person that you hired, that they're trying to solve. But I think it really is dependent on the position.
Yeah, and it seems it's important that they know. They should know. You shouldn't be at the end of the year and they're not sure whether or not they've been successful. They need to know all the way along. Yeah.
On the other hand, and I'm going to say this specifically to you, I tend to want to help people. So I tend to hold on too long to an employee that, really shouldn't be in the organization, instead of cutting the cord early, which is a relief to them and a relief to everybody on the team. And by waiting too long, it hurts the team, it hurts our culture, it hurts morale, and it's something I'm still trying to learn, unfortunately. But maybe eventually I'll get it.
Yeah, we struggled with that when we were a younger company, because it just wasn't the culture that we wanted, and so And we kind of wanted this tribe mentality, this family mentality, and finally that's actually shifted just in the last like 3 months because we got feedback from the team where they got to the point where they're just like, look, we don't want a family, we want jobs, we want to, we want to. Sure, we'll go get a beer every once in a while, but that's not what we're looking for. Right. We're looking for consistency.
So are you guys doing like 360 reviews? Or is it like how are you giving them feedback on where they are across?
We do 30, 60, 90-day goals.
Oh, that's awesome.
And our managers manage that, and we've realized that you can't really. It's difficult for us to set meaningful, measurable goals. Anything further out than 90 days, So I mean, certainly we have aspirational conversations about what people want to do that year and so forth 2 years from now. But the concrete goals and measurement needs to be more granular than that. But it takes a lot of work.
Adidas. We have not successfully acquired or merged with anyone. You guys have?
I think that's an awesome question. I think it's a really big question.
Yeah.
I'd recommend that you talk to Jeff Walpole at Phase 2 because he's done that.
They've done it several times.
They've done it a couple times. Superstar Media, Open Sourcery, and they were very different, structured, and Tree People are whatever those guys. Yeah. Treehouse, but they were very different acquisitions, all three of them. So
yeah, right here. Yeah. So the question is product development within a services firm, kind of, and it has an impact on employee morale maybe and retention. We knew this one was going to come up, and Alex, you're definitely the best one to tackle it, I think. Or maybe, you guys have your own products also. Talk a little bit about how you guys made those decisions, and we have a perspective too. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all with products, just because of the way that we started as an organization, our first big client when it was just 2 of us that enabled us to grow to 5 was building a product for a new startup that ended up raising money that then funded our growth. And so we've sort of always been product oriented, and we still are building products for clients today. And I think that's the number one thing to recognize when you're working on a project is, are we working on something that has, like, if we were able to figure out a way to automate a lot of the process of deploying this and getting this in the hands of the client, is this a product? Because a lot of times you are building products even if you're not really looking at it like that initially. And so we have a program that we've started. We're about to launch the first company with one of our clients that paid us to build an enterprise resource planning, an ERP system. And so, really they paid us a lot of money to build it. It's pretty obvious that, and it charges people. I mean, it makes them money. So, anything that you build that makes people money can be pretty valuable. But so I think there's the partnership model that we're exploring. For the other products, we've taken either stuff that we needed internally or stuff that we worked on with other clients and started to try to work on it ourselves and do discovery around those things and then try to start to productize it and bring it to market. For us, we just have 2 products that are not, we have the third one, which is the enterprise resource planning. Then we have a healthcare product that we built initially with a client through a client engagement, or at least that's what awoke us to the product need for remote patient monitoring. And then we have a QA tool that we just built that we really needed internally to help refine our process around code reviews and running our tests.
Are you guys pretty intentionally kind of looking for the productable customer too? Is that something that kind of informs your decision making?
We call it Technical Co-Founder as a Service, TKS. We have TCA.AS, but it's nothing but our deck at the moment. But we'll have more up, as these products start to go live. But yeah, I mean, we've been, and when we're talking to clients that we think might have a product there, we're trying to have that conversation up front and try to start the relationship off with that understanding, so that in the case of some of the other products that we built for other companies, once they raised money, the relationship got a lot more complex, and so some of it, I think, if you're going to go the partnership route, is make sure that you upfront understand sort of like, if this gets money, what does that mean for everybody involved? But
I mean, I think it's a really hard question for a services firm to answer, because within the engineering space, it does get a lot of engineers pumped up to be kind of product oriented, I think. We've tried a couple times with products, and we learned really quickly that there's a big difference in managing to product success and managing to services success. We had a product called Project Spaces back in the day, which was like a base camp, basically. In fact, Web Worker Daily, is that thing still around? You guys remember Web Worker Daily? It was like a blog. It said it was a base camp killer. Obviously it wasn't, but but that's one thing. I think being really honest with the teams that you have or the people that you're employing about what your perspective is on those things really matters. Because if you've got guys that want to be product engineers who are sitting in client meetings hashing out requirements and having to do technical architectures for stuff they're not jazzed about, they're not going to stick around for very long. So you can try things, deliberately try things, and if they work, they work. But be really honest would be my what I would say, how it affects morale.
I think if you have a good services relationship with an organization and you think you're working on something that might be a product, you can get them potentially to invest in it via the service work and give them residuals or create some entity around it. I think, and also if you're scratching an itch that's going to make you or your client more money, ultimately it's going to be self-reinforcing. So, like for us, for the QA tool, it saves us like 20 to 40 minutes per pull request for our senior developers, who are like our most valuable resource. So it's just like a no-brainer sort of tool for us. We need it, right? So we built it for that. At the very least, we get to use it. And hopefully now, other people use it. And the other one is if you think there's any big opportunities outside of your normal data, I think the risk in products that I see a lot of people, a trap that I see a lot of people solving is something that A, is not going to be valuable enough to you to justify it just for scratching your own itch. So I see a lot of people making developer tools that their company doesn't necessarily really need. Like, it's not like, oh my God, I need this or my company's going to fail. Or it's not, the potential market opportunity is not beyond sort of the worlds that we already exist in. So for us, like the healthcare thing, is just too, you look at the opportunity and the need, and it's too big to ignore. So I think it sort of pushes us to keep going in that way. So yeah.
I think it's 3:15. We had an hour, right? I just want to make sure. Let's take another question, and then maybe any last words.
Yeah, real quick on that one. Go hunt down Drew Gordon from Gordon Studios, who just sold an old Node Squirrel to Pantheon. So I think if you want to talk about a services company that didn't totally pivot in developing a product, he's got some good experience there.
So actually, we're at the hour. Any last words from you guys or questions for these guys?
I'll just say Zenefits. Zenefits.com. If one of the hardest things is trying to build out infrastructure, Zenefits is phenomenal as a company that can just outsource in a very intimate way with great web tools all of the stuff that you don't want to be thinking about.
All right, that's we'll end on Zenefits then.
One last thing I do want to say is talk to the other. Like, if you have questions about how business in Drupal, talk to the other business owners like us, but like the ones that are in your city. I think you'll find that all of us got help along the way, and almost all of us are going to be helpful to you if you come ask us for help. So don't be shy. Go to your local meetup, host your local meetup, go ask other people for help, and you'll get a lot of it in this community. So what do you think?
I agree with what Alex said. I think that's brilliant. I still, once a quarter, I'll call a couple of these guys here in this room and ask questions. How do you do this? What are you thinking of that? And this community is very valuable in that way. Oh, yeah, it reminds I don't know how active it is, but our former CEO, Chris Wolz, who was supposed to be doing this today, I don't know if he set it up, but he's been running this BOF session the last couple of years, and there is a LinkedIn Drupal Business C exchange, I think it's called. Do you know what it's called? He wanted me to tout it, and now I can't remember what it's called. Isn't that terrible? But there's a LinkedIn group for Drupal business owners. So, and also, you guys all raised your hand at the beginning of this thing. Turn in and talk to each other too. So, thanks a lot for the attention in the hour. And if you got any other questions, feel free to ask.
as we follow up.
Thanks.
Guys. Drupal CXO is the name of the LinkedIn group.